All right, ready to jump into the full review here. JD, we've got a special guest on the line here. Why don't you go ahead and introduce our guest for the show?
So we have a very special guest today. We have stand-up comedian, ex-pro wrestler, gym teacher extraordinaire, Tom Feline. He's a good friend of mine, and I'm super excited. I've been trying to get him on an episode for a very long time. A big part of the thing is he's actually funny. Whereas Kyle and I like to pretend that we're funny and we make like little dirty 6th grade jokes. We actually have a comedian on the line now who can hopefully spruce this up. So Tommy, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit and feel free to plug away where people can find you, listen to you, see you, and all the great stuff that you do.
Thanks. My name's Tom Feline. I actually specialize in 7th and 8th grade humor, so it's a little bit more advanced than what you guys are maybe used to.
Love it.
But I'm a gym teacher by trade, but I also tell jokes. I'm a comedian. I work primarily at the Comedy Shrine in Aurora. I run the open mic night there on Monday night. And then I also do some weekend shows here and there. I'll be there tomorrow, which I guess by the time this podcast goes out will be last Thursday. So hopefully it went well.
The podcast or your show?
My show. Well, the podcast too. Mostly my show.
Okay.
Now, you always kick ass, so it's definitely exciting. It's sort of, for me, a breath of fresh air to have somebody, again, that's actually funny.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I think this is a really fun thing that you guys do. I love it.
Hey, are you on social media? Can our audience follow you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Feline Machine, Filline, and then Machine. I'm on Facebook too, but I mostly use Facebook to get in political debates that I should probably avoid. So,
what about YouTube? Do you have any clips up there, your shows or anything?
Yeah, kind of. No, not really. I do, but it's private because I'm a teacher.
Yeah.
So the thing is, like, all my YouTube clips are kind of just to send to producers if I'm trying to get on a show.
Gotcha.
I don't have a public YouTube channel yet because I'm just a pussy. I can't. Like, I teach little kids. I can't have their parents logging on and watching me tell dick jokes.
No,
Can I just say
total
Feline
sense.
Machine is my second favorite Twitter handle. Second, of course, to Unjust Justin.
Of course.
Oh,
right.
okay, right.
Burp.
Yeah, the Feline Machine was the name of our answering machine growing up. It's literally, my mom would say, "You've reached the Feline Machine, leave a message." So it just kind of stuck from there.
That's awesome.
I love it.
Yeah.
Some of our younger audience is like, answering machine? What the fuck is that?
Right, yeah.
Cool. Well, we're excited to have you on. So let's go ahead and dive into it here. So the film begins with a cartoon, and we see Robin Williams here for the first time in the role of Daniel Hillard, and he's singing Figaro. JD, let's talk about our lead character here. What do you think about Robin Williams in the dual role of Daniel and Mrs. Doubtfire?
First of all, I'm instantly drawn into his horrible haircut.
Okay.
What is the deal with, like, I'm being serious. Like, it bothered me throughout the entire movie. I thought he was wearing a wig for half of it. Not as Mrs. Doubtfire. Oh, shove it, Kyle. But he just, this haircut that he has is worse than Harry and Lloyd.
It's pretty bad. I was wondering, like, did he go to the barber? He just, give me the simple jack. Like, what the fuck is going on with his hair?
You went to Simple Jack.
What would have been Simple Jack back in the 90s?
Oh gosh, yeah, I don't know. It's like he was almost Amish with that haircut. He's like a couple clips away.
He's
You
very
don't know what's
disheveled.
going on. Yes.
He was definitely trash, like, for being honest. Kind of a trashy guy.
Now let's talk a little bit here. Daniel goes rogue on the script, and he kind of gives a PSA on not smoking, and he's like, let me get some feedback. I'll ask the writers, what do you guys think? Is it okay to promote smoking? And then the camera turns, and all three of them are smokers, and they're lighting up. He's like, that's a mistrial. And then Lou tells him to read what's written or to get out. So Daniel quits, and as he leaves, he quotes the great Porky Pig, which I thought was a nice touch. And then we cut to the kids next. So we meet Lydia, Chris, and Natalie. Lydia warns her dad not to have the party because of Chris's bad report card, but Daniel says Mom's not going to be home for 4 hours. So we cut to the house party, and he's essentially ordered like an entire zoo to come to the house, and the nosy neighbor, Miss Gloria next door, is not happy with the animals getting into her garden. So she calls Miranda at work. Kind of a narc, if you ask me. And we also have our first mention of Stu, who we're going to talk more about here in a few minutes. Miranda arrives back home, and she's got a birthday cake, and she's met by a police officer who asked if she's aware it's illegal to possess a barnyard animal on the property. And she says, what if you're married the one? She apologizes to the cop and promises to respond herself to the noise. She goes inside. A horse immediately starts eating her cake. And then she looks throughout the house, and the kids are jumping all over the place. And we see Daniel on the top of the kitchen table with his hat cocked sideways. And she's like, what in the hell is going on here? And she literally cuts off the music, pulls the cord out of the wall. And Daniel looks to his son and says, party's over. Tommy, what'd you think of this opening scene here?
I think that is an insane party to throw together at the last minute. And I think that like he may have missed his calling there, maybe being a party planner. That's the thing that blew me away. It's also, we're in the middle of San Francisco, right?
Right.
So where do you just get a horse to bring into your house as well?
Right.
Not just the horse, but a house horse.
House horse.
A house horse. Where do you get a house horse in the middle of the, like, I'm assuming it's a weekday because his kids were at school, and he just throws together. And who are the kids? Who are all those kids whose parents were just like, yeah, you can go to this last minute birthday party with a horse?
And none of them stayed around.
And
no, yeah.
Daniel and 40 kids.
Mind you, there's one colored kid in there too.
Right. Just
One.
Yep. Well.
Oh my God.
Jeez. So Miranda and Daniel are fighting back and forth, and Daniel says that he admits, she spends way too much time, with these corporate clowns that you used to despise. And then Miranda screams that it's over. Daniel pleads to try and save the marriage, but she's totally done at this point. She says we have nothing in common. Sure we do. We love each other, don't we? Awkwardly, she says nothing, and then finally says, I want a divorce, and just crushes Daniel. JD, what do you think of this scene here with Miranda kind of just dropping it on Daniel here?
To me, from a writing standpoint, I feel like this scene is a little bit rushed. And the problems that I do have with this film is I'm going to totally unpack and lay down the smack upon, is that it's a movie that I think is sort of in its wrong element. And so we have we're like 8 minutes in right now.
Yeah.
And we have no emotional investment other than we know that Robin Williams has a bad haircut. He has scruples, but they're not proper scruples. I love the word scruples.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I don't either. I'm trying to Google that.
I'll let Kyle give the English Oxford Dictionary definition of.
To figure out what.
I don't even know if I can spell it.
The scruple.
Like a O or a U.
You guys are killing me.
It sounds like a breakfast.
Scruple, a feeling of doubt or hesitation with regard to the morality or propriety of a course of action.
Oh, okay.
So he has scruples about. I'm glad I got to educate you. My fancy English literature degree coming through. He has scruples in the situation of not wanting to voice the bird smoking.
Right.
So he's got the moral high ground.
Okay.
But then he goes and just blows smoke up Sally Field's dress.
So what you're saying is he's an ethical guy, but he hates his wife.
I think he hates her.
Yeah.
So we meet Daniel's brother Frank next, played by Harvey Fierstein. Of course, we talked about him in Independence Day in our archives. Check that out. JD, you love this guy. What did you think of him here as Daniel's brother?
I really feel like this is just a preface to him being in Independence Day. Things don't work out in San Francisco, so he heads east.
Yeah.
David!
Oh, God, I gotta call my brother. Yeah. Okay. Now, the scene ends with Daniel saying he knows Miranda, and this whole thing is just gonna blow over. Of course, it doesn't, and we're in the courtroom next, where Miranda is granted full custody, and Daniel's gonna get only visitations on Saturdays once a week. Let's listen to our first clip as Daniel objects to the ruling.
Your Honor, please. mean, every Saturday, it's 1 day a week. That's not enough. I have to be with my children. It's not a question, really. I mean, I have to be with them, sir, please. I know it seems like a lot, but for me, it's not enough, really. I've been away from them for more than 1 day since the day they were born.
Mr. Hillard, I would like to add that this ruling is only temporary.
Oh, good.
I will assign a court liaison to oversee your case, and there will be a continuance of these proceedings in 90 days. I'm giving you 3 months, Mr. Hillard.
Thank you.
3 months in which to get a job, keep it, and create a suitable home. If this proves to be a possibility for you, I will consider a joint custody arrangement when we reconvene. You're adjourned.
Tommy, what do you think about this scene?
I think it was, I mean, it's heart-wrenching to watch Robin. I mean, I don't know. Do you guys think Robin Williams gets enough credit, like, as an actor?
I don't. We actually talked about this either at the beginning of this episode or in the teaser trailer, that I feel like he's super underrated and never got his due.
Because he's hilarious, obviously, as a comic, but as an actor, I mean, in this courtroom scene and the one later in the movie, it was like, wow, that's really good. That's sad. Like, you can tell he really loves his kids. I don't even have anything funny to say about that, other than he should have expected it because he's a piece of trash. But the actor, Robert Williams, obviously is amazing. But yeah, Daniel, I mean, you got horses in the middle of the day in your house. Like, you want to see your kids? Sorry, it's not. No.
Okay. Now, one of the points I always make, I lump him in there with John Candy as being one of the few comics that I feel like can turn the page and also be really dramatic and make you laugh and cry at the same time. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. I wonder if, like, really dramatic, serious actors get upset when comics just come into a movie and steal the show like that, you know? Because it's happened, and it's been, you know, John Candy and Robin Williams are two great examples of that, but I think it happens fairly often.
Sure. Every once in a great while, Adam Sandler will bust it out. He's like, oh, yeah, I can do this. We cut to Mrs. Sellner next, and she's asking him about what he can do for employment, and he says he can do voices. And she's like, voices? What do you mean? Let's listen to the clip here.
Voice.
Yeah! We've come to this planet looking for intelligent life. Oops, we made a mistake.
What happened to be in America? Don't ask for a green card.
I want you in the worst way.
Well, it's certainly a rough meeting, and it's not going very well for me, I'll tell you that. Hey, boss, give it a chance. She's going to loosen up any moment. Look at me right now, Moneypenny. I want to undo that bow and get to know you.
I'm firstly to make a deal with you. Nancy and I are still looking for the other half of my head. You're doing it. I'm sitting on a gold mine.
Don't make me smack you, sweetheart. I'll do it. I do a great impression of a hot dog.
Mr. Hillard, do you consider yourself humorous?
I used to. There was a time when I found myself funny. But today, you have proven me wrong. Thank you.
JD, what were your thoughts on the different voices from Daniel?
I've definitely had job interviews that have gone as bad as this public hearing interview that he's got going on. But I just, again, I'm going to be the voice. I'm going to be the asshole during this episode, audience. I apologize. But what the hell is he doing here? Oh, I care about my kids. I care about my well-being. I want to get an apartment and get them back. Let me just make voices during a serious interview? What the hell is he thinking? No, he needs to be in a suit with a tie, comb that hair, and say, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am.
I love that he does an impression of a hot dog. That made me laugh hysterically.
Love the hot dog. Do you, Kyle, do you remember Terrence Ramsey from college? He was a year or two older than us.
God, that sounds familiar. I'm better with faces, though.
One of the things that they used to do in college, and I never got to experience it, but it was like a comedy night as a team builder.
Okay.
And this guy, and I think he was autistic. Okay. And during comedy night or sketch night or whatever it was, he did an imitation of bacon. And the story that I'm told is he just sort of laid on the ground and wiggled around for a while. So that always those two stories are always linked up in my mind. The hot dog, I'm doing the hot dog right now. And then bacon. I'm doing bacon right now.
That's amazing.
Did he make a sizzling sound when he laid there?
Tom, he's bacon.
Oh, right. Bacon
Damn it.
sizzles.
Bacon sizzles. A piece of bacon wants to sizzle.
Oh yeah. Do you guys agree that if this movie had this was PG, right?
I believe so.
If it was PG-13 or R, I think Robin Williams' character would be drunk for most of the movie. Don't you think? Like, he's got a problem. I feel like he's got a problem, but they can't show it because it's PG.
That's a good point.
We'll definitely hit that on that last scene at the end when he's just pounding scotch with fake Jack London.
Well, he's had experience.
Scallywag.
Does your girlfriend have a girlfriend?
He's able to pound God knows how many glasses of scotch and fix his makeup and do it. That's later. That's later. Sorry.
Yeah, we'll get to him mixing scotch and wine and makeup and.
Yeah, let's keep chugging along. So Daniel starts his new job working at a studio, and he asks the new boss. He's like, "Am I going to be introducing all these films on air?" And the guy just chuckles. He's like, "Not exactly. You're going to box them and you're going to ship them, and then when you're done with those, you're going to start over on those over there. You box them, you ship them. Any questions?" Daniel's like, "Yeah. So after you box them," and the guy cuts it. He's like, "You ship them, smart ass." And then we cut to Miranda's office where Stu has entered, and you can see she's pretty infatuated with him right away. She's going over her sketches, but he's really uninterested. He just keeps hitting on her, and he finally cuts her off. He's like, "I would just love to get reacquainted." He wants to take her to dinner, and she explains that she's at the beginning of a divorce, and he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, and I always hoped that you'd find happiness." Tommy, are you buying this nice guy act from Stu, or do you think this is legit?
No. I think I'm not buying the nice guy act. He's too handsome. He's too British. That's why I didn't like him as Bond, because he's just an asshole. I just want to punch him in the face.
I never really got into all the James Bond movies, so I don't even know if I've watched the one with him in it.
Don't watch any of the ones with him in it.
Yeah, I don't mind Daniel Craig though. He's pretty decent.
Daniel Craig is solid.
None of them are as good as Sean Connery. JD, give me your best Sean Connery.
I'm number one, money pushy.
Love it. We cut to Daniel's apartment, and he's continued to be a slob like he was earlier in the movie. Lydia says that his apartment is detestable, and Natalie just wants him to tell Mommy that he's sorry. He says that he wishes it was that easy. Daniel jokingly asked about the old battle axe, and then he jokingly says that she hopes she hasn't come down with something, some like horrible, deadly disease. And then Lydia tells him she wants him to try harder. So as they're eating, Miranda arrives early and honks the horn outside, and they get up to leave, but Daniel tells them to sit down, and they're his goddamn kids too. Miranda comes in and comments on his place being a mess, and we find out that she's put an ad in the newspaper for a housekeeper. And before they leave, Daniel switches 2 numbers on the newspaper ad, and then we've got a montage of a bunch of different fake calls from Daniel. And finally, he does the Mrs. Doubtfire voice, and he doesn't scare her off with this one. So let's listen to the first clip here of hearing Mrs. Doubtfire for the first time.
Hello? Hello? I'm calling in regards to the ad I read in the paper.
Yes. Well, would you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Oh, certainly, dear. For the past 15 years, I have worked for the Smythe family of Elborn, England. That's Smythe, not Smith, dear. And for them, I did house cleaning, cooking, and took care of their 4 glorious children. Oh, I grew quite attached to them after 15 years, but they grew up, as children tend to do. Oh, but listen to me, I'm going on when you should be telling me about your little ones.
Well, I have 2 girls.
Oh, 2 precious gems, no doubt the jewel of your eye.
And 1 boy.
Oh, the little prince, how wonderful.
I must tell you, there would be a little light cooking required.
Oh, I don't mind that, dear. I'd love some heavy cooking. But I do have one rule. They'll only eat good, nutritious food with me. And if there's any dispute about that, it's either good wholesome food or empty tummies. That's my rule. I hope it's not too harsh for you, dear.
No. Would you mind coming on an interview, say, Monday night at 7:30?
Oh, I'd love to, dear.
Wonderful. I'm at 2640 Steiner Street.
Steiner. Oh, how lovely.
Could you tell me your name?
My name? I thought I gave it to you, dear.
No.
Oh. Doubtfire.
I beg your pardon?
Doubtfire, dear? Mrs. Doubtfire.
Well, I look forward to meeting you.
Oh, lovely, dear. Me too.
Bye-bye.
Ta-ta.
JD, what do you think of this scene?
Well, first of all, every one of his voices kind of sounds exactly the same.
Yeah, there's definitely bits and pieces of all the same voices for sure.
When I was younger and I saw this movie, I was kind of like, oh, that's so cool. He does voices. As a grown-ass adult, I'm kind of like, that sounded like the last voice. These are clearly crank calls. How is she not picking up on this?
Right. And they were all one after another. Like, she didn't pick up on the fact that her ex-husband, who is a voice actor, may just be messing with her.
Right.
How
Like,
gullible
no
is this lady?
Marriage failed.
Yeah.
This marriage was doomed from the start. She has no sense of humor whatsoever and no sense of irony if she doesn't get that joke. And he probably knew that, and that's why he knew she would just fall for this flat on her face.
So Daniel arrives at his brother Frank's house next, and Frank answers the door and signals, "Can you make me a woman?" And Frank says, "Oh, honey, I'm so happy," in his weird gargly voice. We have a montage next of Daniel just trying out all these different wigs and looks, and personally, I kind of like the Barbra Streisand look. Tommy, what do you think, though, of all these different versions?
They were all clearly Robin Williams. That's one thing that confused me about this movie when I was a kid, when I first saw it. I was like, that's Robin Williams. And even when he was in full Mrs. Doubtfire, I was like, that's still Robin Williams.
Yeah.
I don't understand. I remember the first time I saw this movie, when I was obviously super little, I didn't catch on to the fact that he was wearing a latex mask. I thought Mrs. Doubtfire was just Robin Williams in a wig. So I was super confused anytime the mask came off. I was like, why does he need the mask? It's just Robin Williams.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the only reason they do the latex mask is because of his David's partner. I keep calling him David. But the Independence guy, Frank. He's like, his partner's like, well, he's got 5 o'clock shadow at 8:30 in the morning.
Oh yeah,
so we've got to hide this thing.
That's Aunt Jack, his partner.
Yeah, Aunt Jack.
Yes, Aunt Jack.
That's what he calls
Frank
him. I love it.
I love that part. That part would not fly in modern cinema.
No, and that's another thing that completely went over my head as a kid.
Yeah.
I don't know if it went over my head or if it was kept from me because I probably saw the movie with my very conservative parents.
Mm-hmm.
And of course they wouldn't explain that to me. But yeah, completely went over my head as a small child.
I just thought it was Frank's good friend that lived with him.
Of course,
I had
yeah.
no idea.
Which is exactly what people would tell their kids back in the 90s when two men lived together.
So Mrs. Doubtfire charms Miranda right away as she comes to the house. They go into the kitchen area and she starts fixing her some tea. And at one point, Miranda says, "You remind me of someone. I feel like I've known you for years." And she says that she would love it if Mrs. Doubtfire would come and work for us. And Mrs. Doubtfire, of course, accepts. And then we cut outside where Daniel is walking home. He gets to the door where Mrs. Sellner is waiting for him. And, Mrs. Doubtfire plays it off and says that Daniel's her brother and she's just staying with him for the time being. So they go upstairs to the apartment where Daniel proceeds to put on an entire performance, switching back and forth, one character to the other. And then at one point, Daniel accidentally knocks the mask out of the window and it gets run over. Garbage truck here. His 2 little kids are actually watching this as he's putting on a woman's fake suit with boobs and stuff. I thought that was hilarious. And then Mrs. Sellner is about to discover Mrs. Doubtfire is actually Daniel when she comes into the kitchen, but instead he slams his face into a vanilla icing cake and then drops the patented "Hello." Yeah, there you go.
Oh, we're very familiar with that.
JD, what do you think of this scene? So Mrs. Doubtfire is cracking down on the kids in the next scene, making them clean and scrub the whole house. And at one point, Lydia stops and says this is exploitation. And then Natalie and Chris are both like, shut up. And then Mrs. Doubtfire tells them, if you're ready to start your homework, you can go upstairs, or we can keep up the manual labor. So she sends them up to the bedrooms for homework time. And then on their way up to the bedroom, they all say how much they miss their dad. And he says to himself, I'm here in, some form. Next, Daniel almost starts a fire trying to cook up a meal for the family. Eventually, he's going to have to call for carryout, which is going to cost him about $140. And then Miranda arrives home and is just amazed that the kids were upstairs doing their homework. The house is clean. And then she turns around and Mrs. Doubtfire's like, dinner is served. Tommy, what do you think of this scene?
I think that's a really good deal for Chinese food late at night. It was Chinese food, right?
It said fine dining.
Fine dining. Okay,
Yeah.
I thought I saw the cartons, the signature Chinese food cartons. No, but that's a really good deal for again San Francisco late at night. And I have a hard time believing that nobody would catch on to the fact that the food was ordered in from somewhere else.
Again, she's so gullible. Here,
right?
You got to put some of the blame on her. As Mrs. Doubtfire leaves, Lydia stops to thank her outside and for all she's doing, and for making her mom so happy again. And it's kind of a nice scene between the two. Mrs. Doubtfire gets on the bus, and the bus driver hits on her again, as he did earlier in the movie. She sits down on the bus. The driver turns to look at her, and you see the just super hairy Robin Williams leg. He's just like, it's all natural. Don't know what to tell you. So we have another montage. This time it's to do this like a lady from Aerosmith. And it's just Mrs. Doubtfire and Chris at the park playing soccer. And then they're on a bike ride here, which Mrs. Doubtfire almost crashes checking out the ladies that are running by, which I thought was hilarious. And then we see her reading to Natalie and learning how to steam lobster. And there's also a part of this where Mrs. Doubtfire is just playing the air guitar to a broom. And then we see Stu and Miranda arrive home from a date. And Stu waves hi to Mrs. Doubtfire, who waves back. And then when he turns to get in the car, flicks him off. JD, what do you think of this montage?
Montages, right? Am I right?
90s. There's like 5 of them in this movie, by the way.
There are a lot of montages in this movie. There are a lot of montages in the 90s. Okay, let me organize my thoughts here, audience. From a writing standpoint, when you are creating a montage, you have to think of your characters in terms of what they're doing, why they're doing it, and is it practical and realistic? So you have to think Robin Williams, a grown-ass man dressed as a even growner-ass woman, cleaning the house of his ex-wife, is just going to break down and play air guitar with a broom? Well, what is he doing and why? Why does he do that? Somebody tell me. Why does he do that?
It makes no sense.
No, tell me. Tell me. I'm angry right now. Tell me. Why does he do that?
He's drunk.
Ooh.
There you go. He's coming back.
I like this conspiracy theory that we're building.
The whole subplot that was cut to make it PG. He is just hammered throughout the entire thing.
God, can you even imagine
I
if they
get
cut
weird
this
when I
movie,
get
though?
drunk, so
It's already 2 hours and 7 minutes long. If they actually cut stuff from this, dear God.
Yeah.
Ugh. So Mrs. Doubtfire meets Stu next, and he's super nice to Mrs. Doubtfire. Mrs. Doubtfire pulls out the hood ornament. She's like, could you help me with this, dear? I found it outside. And he's like, oh, yeah, that belongs to my Mercedes. She's like, oh, that big expensive car. And then under her breath, she's like, you know what they say? A man who buys a big expensive car is trying to compensate for something small in the genital region. And Stu just takes a deep breath. He's like, oh, thank you. Lovely to meet you. Miranda comes over to ask Mrs. Doubtfire if she could stay a few extra hours. And then Mrs. Doubtfire tries to steer Miranda away from dating Stu. And Miranda's like, how long did it take you after Winston passed to, have the urge? Mrs. Doubtfire immediately is like, the urge never came back. The only answer is lifelong celibacy. And if you violate it, then heaven help you. She says good luck and just walks away. I love this scene though, Tommy. What do you think?
I mean, she didn't seem all that celibate when she was getting macked on by that sexy bus driver, you know? Like, I don't know. I felt like she seemed like she was into it.
Mrs. Doubtfire is in the bathroom next when Chris accidentally walks in on her, only to see Mrs. Doubtfire standing up and just pissing in the toilet. Chris runs out and tells Lydia they have to call the cops, and she's like, "Why?" And Chris is like, "Well, Mrs. Doubtfire, she's a she, she's a he, she." And then, half man, half woman. Mrs. Doubtfire comes out to try and calm the situation, but then when Chris smarts off, the real Daniel voice comes out, like, "Hey, watch your mouth, young man." And Daniel has to explain that Uncle Frank and Aunt Jack did this to me. And he reveals that it's just a mask and that he didn't have any surgeries or anything. And Lydia's really accepting of this, but Chris is kind of standoffish. And they make a pact not to tell Natalie because she'll blow the cover. And they can't tell Mom because if she finds out, he's going to only be able to see them through plated glass windows. JD, I think Chris is kind of lucky he didn't get full frontal here. What would you think of this scene?
This is a weird scene. Can we just call this scene for what it is? Can we label a spade here? This is a weird freaking scene. Like, this is almost like throwback to Sleepaway Camp. And, like, this is traumatizing to him. He's a she, she's a he, he's a she.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then to find out it's your dad? Like, that's kind of like, okay, I'm done with this family. This is like a scene out of Arrested Development. Like, really? Her? It's so traumatizing, so horrible. Yeah. And then, watch your mouth. He just drunkenly slurs. Because I'm totally buying into Tommy's Mrs. Doubtfire is just a drunken slouch.
Yeah.
This is totally real life, like Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Like, this happened to Bruce Jenner. He's like, oh, fuck. Oh my God. Tried to tuck it back in.
In all seriousness, this is, like, this scene is very problematic. Imagine this scene or this movie being made today.
You couldn't do it.
It could not happen.
Nope. So next, we're going to get introduced to Mr. Lundy, played by the great Robert Prosky, as they're watching Mr. Sprinkles on the local channel playing with dinosaurs. Let's listen to a clip here of Daniel and Mr. Lundy.
Oh, no. Which one's the dinosaur? One in the middle, I think. No, you're wrong. They're all extinct. Can't believe they're still subjecting kids to this. This is insane. They should have a little disclaimer that says, do not operate heavy machinery while watching this show. It's incredible. This guy used to put me to sleep when I was a kid. It's amazing. He's the warmth of a snow pea. He makes Mr. Rogers look like Mick Jagger. That's insane. What kind of idiot kept this guy in the air for 25 years? Me. You? Jonathan Lundy. Jonathan Lundy, general manager, owner. I'm Daniel Hillard, former employee. Maybe. Huh? That's funny. Listen, I don't mean to criticize. I just, sometimes I have kind of like
criticize all you want. The show's terrible. No, I'm going to cancel it. It's pulling down the whole afternoon schedule. Nah, it's gone.
You know what you got to do? Maybe just, start from scratch. Give it kind of maybe a musical number. Imagine a little Tyrannosaurus Rex comes out,
Hillard, get your ass to the truck. That shipment's got to make a 6 o'clock flight to L.A.
Tell him this is Mr. Lundy.
He knows who I am.
Yeah. Do you ever wish that sometimes you could freeze frame a single moment in your day, look at it and say, this is not my life?
Tommy, what do you think of this short scene and our introduction to Mr. Lundy here?
Mr. Lundy reminded me of The Frugal Gourmet. You remember that show?
I don't.
I do.
You do. The Frugal Gourmet was actually my favorite show when I was like really little, and I have no idea why. But he was like this older guy with a mustache who would cook stuff that it was not interesting at all. Like he would make like basic lasagna or like stir fry or something. But this was back when cooking shows would literally nobody knew how to cook anything, so you just cook basic stuff. And that's what it reminded me of, like super boring. But as a kid, I was into it, so I don't know. I didn't mind Mr. Lundy.
So funny enough, so my older brother, whom I've spoken words against in prior episodes.
Yeah, you guys love each other.
Yeah, we're best friends, lovey-dovey. His name is Jeff, and the Frugal Gourmet's name is Jeff Smith. So when we would argue when we were younger, I would call him the Frugal Gourmet.
Oh my God.
And that was an insult. Like, Jeff, you're the Frugal Gourmet.
That's hilarious.
Miranda and Mrs. Doubtfire are talking in the kitchen next, and Miranda mentioned that she had talked to Daniel's social worker, and she told her that Daniel has an elderly lady living with him pretending to be his sister. Miranda's like, yeah, I told her Daniel doesn't have a sister. Miranda sits down at the table next and explains why the marriage with Daniel didn't work, and she explains that after a few years, everything stopped being funny. She started working a lot and didn't see the kids, and she would come home and the house would be a wreck, and she says, the truth is, I didn't like who I was when I was with him. When I'm not with Daniel, I'm better. She says, I used to think that Daniel could do anything but be serious. JD, we get a little insight into why the marriage didn't work. I think this kind of sets up the last couple scenes. What do you think of this?
It's, again, when I commented earlier about me thinking that this film is sort of comes into its spot at the wrong time, when we get the divorce scene at 8 minutes in, we're getting fed the information that really inspires the break in their relationship, which is important from a character standpoint. And to have it just thrown in randomly at this point lets it be forgotten. But it's a pivotal scene, and it's kind of sad. Like, this is in many, like Mrs. Doubtfire, you can make the same movie and it could be a drama. You can make the same movie and it could be a rom-com, and you can make the same movie and it could be a horror movie.
Well, to your point, and we talked about this earlier in the episode before Tommy got on, that's why Sally Field is such a great addition to this movie, because she brings it up that next level. Where if this was just like some, like Christine Brinkley, like you're not going to get this performance. Although I wouldn't have mind seeing Christina Brinkley in the next scene at the pool.
Swing.
Swing. Yada yada.
90s Christine Brinkley.
Exactly. Now
she's had a lot of work done.
Yeah, most of them haven't they?
Right, yeah.
In that town. Now we arrive at the pool next, and the whole family is there, and they see Stu at the top of the dive board, and Mrs. Doubtfire immediately is like, "Oh, look, Natalie, that's what liposuction looks like." And then Mrs. Doubtfire continues to throw jabs at Stu, and she says, "Oh dear, by the looks of it, it must be very cold in the water." Natalie says, "Your stomach looks different than my daddy." And Mrs. Doubtfire chimes in right away. "Oh, not everyone can afford a personal trainer, dear." Stu leans in and touches Mrs. Doubtfire on the arm and says, "If you need anything at all, just let me know. Put it on my tab." And then he walks away, and under her breath, she says, "Touch me again and I'll drown you, you bastard." Mrs. Doubtfire is at the bar chugging beers when a hot lady in a bikini comes over to get a drink, and Mrs. Doubtfire winks at the girl and says, "It's on me." And then Stu comes over to the bar and kind of strikes up a conversation with the friends of his and comments on how great the kids are, and he's crazy about that little one, Natalie, and points to her. And then the guy says, "Wow, this coming from the guy who wouldn't even date a woman if she had kids." And his buddy asked about the real father, and Stu says, "What can I say? The guy's a loser." He grabs his drinks and turns to walk back to the pool when Mrs. Doubtfire grabs a lime and hits him right in the back of the head, and then yells, "Oh, it was a drive-by fruiting. I'll get him, don't worry."
So run-by fruiting?
Run-by, drive-by, come on. What's the difference?
No, I'm going to I'm going to pull rank. It's a run-by fruiting.
Okay.
It is a run-by fruiting.
I actually did write run-by fruiting and didn't read it right.
Yeah, nobody's driving at the poolside.
Tommy, what do you think about this whole scene here with Mrs. Doubtfire throwing the little jabs and then throwing a 90-mile-an-hour heater at the back of his head?
I love that Mrs. Doubtfire has now, in this movie, made 2 comments about Stu's penis being small. And, yeah, the run by fruiting is just... And then Stu turns around, clearly came from her. Like, what is going through his mind at this point is what I want to know. Like, clearly this old lady just threw that line at the back of my head. He's not buying it that it was a run by fruiting. You can see it in his face.
So we're at work next, and Daniel goes into the dinosaur show to kind of play behind the desk, and he starts making all these different noises and doing impressions of the dinosaurs. And Mr. Lundy catches the entire performance and starts clapping and tells him it was great. So he sets up a dinner meeting with him for next Friday to hear more about his ideas, and it's going to be at Bridges Restaurant at 7 p.m. sharp. Daniel says he'll be there, and then Lundy leaves, and Daniel tells the dinosaurs to take 5. Actually, take 5 million. You're dead. JD, what do you think about this scene here? Things are kind of looking up for Daniel professionally.
Despite him being like an awful, horrible, drunken asshole to everybody, including his family and his wife's new lover, things are looking up for him. Congratulations. You get to have your cake and eat it too.
We're all on board with the drunk undertones. now.
Sold.
It's officially, it's just part of it now. He's drunk.
It does feel like we're onto something there. Well done by you, Tommy. So Miranda arrives at Daniel's apartment, and she's impressed with everything that he's done. It's super clean. He's made dinner. And he asks Miranda for a second chance to watch the kids after school. She's like, I can't get rid of Mrs. Doubtfire. She's the best thing that ever happened to us. Chris is passing all his classes. The kids love him. And Daniel's like, oh, yeah, sounds too good to be true. Tommy, I guess in this case, it's like, careful what you wish for here for Daniel, because he's now almost made it impossible for him to get what he wants, which is more time with the kids.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's finding that he needs Mrs. Doubtfire as much as the kids need Mrs. Doubtfire. And Miranda, really. Like, they all need Mrs. Doubtfire. Absolutely. Which is quite a dilemma to be in his situation.
He's like, damn this talent of mine.
Yeah,
I'm too good at this. So Miranda's trying on a dress for her dinner with Stu when Mrs. Doubtfire just starts shooting down all the dresses because she's like, oh dear, that one barely covers. I hope you've waxed. And then instead she picks out a dress and she's like, I wore that to a funeral in the 70s for my aunt. So she goes with the other dress that the kids want. Then she reveals that Stu wants everyone to come to dinner on Friday, and she's invited you, Mrs. Doubtfire, and you have to be there. It would mean so much to me. And she says it's going to be Friday night at 7 at her favorite restaurant, Bridges, which is exactly where Daniel's dinner meeting with Lundy is going to take place. JD, from a writing standpoint, do you like this setup, or do you feel like this is too convenient?
I dislike this setup because I feel that the urgency and the irony of him showing up to Bridges with Lundy and running into Miranda and a beautiful Pierce Brosnan and the family has a more payoff than this back and forth of going to the bathroom and drinking wine, going to the table, drinking scotch, going back to the table, drinking wine. Like, there's so much more on the table of him running into his ex-wife and her new lover that I think they could have played with. That would have been more dramatic and traumatizing to the kids who know that their father is a she, he's a he, she, she's a she. That, like, they went for the slapstick over, like, the deep-seated issue here. I think that this could have been a, like, Oscar-worthy scene that they just didn't do.
Okay.
Yeah, they definitely sacrificed the drama for slapstick here.
And it's hilarious.
Right, it is funny.
Don't get me wrong. Like, watching him run around and then, is that lady's perfume on you? Does your girlfriend have a girlfriend? Like, it's funny.
And the scotch, how many glasses of scotch between the two of them?
Doubles.
And Lundy acts like this is just a regular thing for him. Like this is what he does when he has a meeting with somebody he just met.
Well, he wears a pinky ring, so it's okay.
Right. I mean, like if Daniel has a problem, Lundy he's gonna die soon.
Well, public access TV, that just comes with the territory.
Yeah.
I love the fact that he's like, I got the stretch limo. He's like, we could take him back there. Like, clearly, like, he's got some bad intentions for these two women. I don't know what he's planning.
Yeah, this is gonna bite him in about 20 years. He's not gonna be good.
Not
Hashtag
even Mad
me too.
Men is this bad. Like,
Yeah.
Don Draper and Roger Sterling never get into this kind of trouble.
He is
Got
gonna
the
get
stretched, pour some double scotches.
Like Harvey
So-
Weinstein has nothing on this guy.
He's the Harvey Weinstein of local cable television. Wow. So let's get to Bridges' restaurant here. So Mrs. Doubtfire arrives and gets out of the car. We see Lundy get out of his vehicle, and they enter the restaurant, and we find out Lundy is going to sit in the non-smoking section. So Stu is up next. He gives his name, and they're like, smoking or non-smoking? Mrs. Doubtfire's like, smoking! Oh, yeah, sorry, dear. I used to smoke, and I found out the best way to not smoke is to be around it so I can randomly ingest a little bit of nicotine. So they go to the non-smoking section, and on the way to the table, Daniel sees Mr. Lundy, and he says to himself, oh, God, he looks pissed already. So Mrs. Doubtfire gets seated next and says she needs to go to the bathroom to take her medicine, and instead makes a phone call to the restaurant to tell Mr. Lundy that he's stuck in traffic and he'll just be a little bit late. And then when she gets back from the bathroom, she sees the necklace that Stu bought Miranda, and she comments that you could either wear that or feed a small village with it. Miranda and Natalie go to the bathroom, and then Mrs. Doubtfire sends Chris and Lydia to look at the dessert tray so she can talk to Stu. Let's listen to a clip here.
That's a pretty impressive bauble you got her.
Oh, thank you.
Fellow gives a gift like that, he wants more than a piece of her heart, eh? Bit of a going down payment, huh?
Excuse me?
No, dear. Sink the sub. Hide the weasel, park the porpoise. Bit of the old Humpty Dumpty. Little Jack Horny. The horizontal mumbo.
Mrs. Doubtfire.
The bone dancer. Rumple foreskin. Baloney bop. Bit of the old cunning linguistics.
Mrs. Doubtfire, please.
Oh, dear. No, I'm sorry. I'm being a little graphic. Sorry. I hope you're up for a little competition.
I beg your pardon?
She's got a power tool in the bedroom, dear. It's her personal jackhammer. She could break sidewalk with that thing. She uses it in the lights dim. It's like a prison movie. Maybe she hasn't chipped her teeth. Oh. I hope you bring cocktail sauce. She's got the crabs, dear, and I don't mean Dungeness. I'm being blunt as a spoon, aren't I? Forgive me.
Tommy, what'd you think of this scene?
I mean, it's amazing that Miranda and Stu are still into each other after this constant bombardment.
Right. Gosh.
I don't know. I'm sorry. I know it's 2019, but I would not want to be with a woman who chips her tooth on her dildo.
Right. It's like a jackhammer. It could break up sidewalks.
Right. You can call me not woke, but I'm not into that. That's over the top.
But, this goes to show, because Kyle, you earlier called Pierce an asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's not. He's a genuine good guy that cares about Miranda. He cares about the kids. He even cares about Daniel. He is there for them. And this drunk bastard is just trying to spoil it all because of his own arrogance.
Yeah. Well, he wants to be with his kids too, but I don't know.
Oh, he wants to sink the sub with Miranda. He wants to bone dance with her. Baloney pony. He wants to do the sideways vibrating marimba. Like, come on.
He wants to keep her around to be the straight man to all his ridiculous sketches because she has no sense of humor, and he needs that.
Modern day Laurel and Hardy.
Exactly.
Of sex.
It's like a nightstick at a prison cell. Jeez. He had so many references. It was freaking ridiculous. I'd love to see the outtake of that, because Robin Williams probably just riffed that for like 20 minutes in a row.
And Pierce was probably dying laughing.
Right, exactly.
Oh dear.
So Mrs. Doubtfire goes to the bathroom and changes, and Daniel appears and goes and sits down with Mr. Lundy, and they start ordering the drinks. He's like, what are you having? He's like, I'll just have what he's having. So Lundy says he'll have a double shibbish on the rocks. I don't even know what a double shibbish is. Like, apparently that's code
Isn't
word
it
for...
Glenfiddich?
Was it?
Glenfiddich, I think, it's Scotch.
Glenfiddich? God, I don't even know what he says.
It tastes like a
Yeah, not
Sharpie.
Shivets. It's,
Yeah.
no, Sharpies taste like Malort.
Malort. Malort. Sharpie with a hint of lime is Malort. Scotch is like straight Sharpie permanent marker.
Yeah, I would know. I'm not a Scotch guy.
Neither am I.
Keep it simple. Miller Lite.
Ooh.
Yeah, JD, what do you know?
I know you owe me like 16 beers.
I do, yeah, that's true. Anytime my cell phone goes off, I owe him a beer, but I haven't paid up yet. So,
Oh, wow. 16 is a lot.
yeah, I know. So Lundy tells the waiter to make his a double so he can catch up. And then Lundy says, let's cut to the chase here. What can you do to help the ratings? And Daniel says, don't patronize the kids. Make it fun. Make it entertaining. If it's something you'd enjoy, it's something they'll enjoy. Lundy says, bingo. And they just keep drinking. And then Daniel looks over at the table with the family and tells Lundy he'll be right back. So he goes in and changes again, goes back to the table. And the waiter tries to help Mrs. Doubtfire sit down, but she crashes to the ground because she's drunk. And I can't believe I've never noticed until Tommy pointed it out. She's just a drunk mess here. Yeah.
Right. We're theorizing that she's drunk for the whole movie, but she's definitely drunk here. Now, they're not hiding that. They can show one drunk scene in a PG movie, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
This was it. Yeah.
So she sits back and then starts drinking the wine at the other table where her fake teeth fall into the glass and her and Stu have to like fork it out. A co-forking. I don't know what's going on there.
Co-forking. That's something else. That's something else, pal.
So she goes back to the bathroom.
Put that in an Urban Dictionary. That's a new T-shirt right there, Kyle. Co-forking.
Co-forking. I love it. So she goes back to the bathroom to reattach the teeth, and then Daniel comes back to the table, and Lundy smells the perfume, and then sees the lipstick, and then Daniel makes up a story about running into an ex, and she couldn't keep her hands off of me, and Lundy's like, you scallywag. And then he tells him that he's got a stretch limo, and asked if she has a friend for him, and they can go back to the limo, and we covered all this stuff already, but he sends Daniel back to get the ex-girlfriend, which he just goes back and changes into Mrs. Doubtfire, and then goes into the kitchen and adds the pepper to Stu's jambalaya, knowing that he's allergic and it's probably going to kill him. And then Mrs. Doubtfire thinks she's going back to the table with the kids, but instead sits down across from Lundy. Let's listen to a clip here between Lundy and Mrs. Doubtfire.
Can I help you, man?
Oh, sorry I'm late. After all those scotches, I had to piss like a racehorse.
Daniel?
Yeah?
Why in God's name are you dressed like a woman?
Well, I'd like you to meet the host of your new show.
Host?
Euphigenia Doubtfire, dear. I specialize in the education and entertainment of children.
Surprise.
JD, what'd you think of this scene?
Well, first of all, let's focus on the fact that he literally tried to murder another human.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, I've been drunk before. Kyle, you've been drunk. Tommy, you've been drunk. We've all been drunk together. But we've never tried to murder one another.
No.
Good point.
There was one time I tried to murder Aaron Palmer. Great story.
You didn't succeed.
No, I did not succeed, but I put a brick. You know how like in like 1950s cartoons, you'd put like a bucket of water on the top of a door?
Yes.
Yes.
So when you open the door, the bucket of water would pour on someone?
Right.
I did that with a brick.
Oh, God.
And I propped it up so when my roommate would open the door, the brick would fall on his head.
That's
and by the grace of God, what?
That's a real dick move.
Yeah,
a concussion.
No, I got funnier stories. But by the grace of God, nonetheless, the brick fell forward slightly and then balanced itself on the door and didn't fall.
Did you yell, "Suck brick, kid"?
No, I just yelled, damn it.
Damn it, I didn't murder this guy.
On one thing, JD, because we did get drunk at your bachelor party the day before we met Tommy, and I did kill you in a movie. So technically, I have tried to kill you drunk.
That's true, Slurpees.
Yeah. So we cut back to Stu receiving his dinner entree, and he just digs in and starts choking almost immediately, and Miranda starts yelling. She's like, he's choking! Someone help, he's choked Mrs. Doubtfire! And then she just yells, help is on the way, dear! And comes over and starts giving Stu the Heimlich until he spits out all the food, and, just the one piece of food. And then in the process, the mask has fallen off of Mrs. Doubtfire's face, and you can just see the look in Miranda's face right away. And then Natalie says, Daddy? Let's listen to Miranda reacting to finding out it's been Daniel the whole time.
Daddy?
Yeah, honey. It's me. Happy birthday.
Daniel! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! The whole time you were... The whole time!
Oh, I'm sorry, Miranda. Please.
Don't talk to me! Don't touch me! Don't touch me! I have to go. We have to leave now. I have to leave. We have to leave now. I have to go. We're going.
Tommy, what do you think of this scene?
I think it's funny that he has a deadly pepper allergy, but almost died from choking on a piece of shrimp. It wasn't the peppers.
Right.
It was the shrimp. That's like
But
earlier.
why would he even order jambalaya if he knows he's allergic to what's in it?
Yeah, I don't think you can have jambalaya without any peppers. He's probably one of those pricks that's like, I'm allergic to pepper, even though maybe it gives him heartburn or something. Like one of those moms that says that they're allergic to gluten, but they're really not. I
hate those people.
I think that this scene made me really not like Stu. He was starting to win me over, you know?
So we're back at court where Daniel is now acting as his own attorney. Let's listen to Daniel giving his closing arguments.
Your Honor, in the past 2 months, I've secured a residence. I've refurbished that residence and made it an environment fit for children. Those are your words. I'm also holding down a job as a shipping clerk. So I believe I met your requirements. Ahead of schedule. In regards to my behavior, I can only plead insanity. Because ever since my children were born, the moment I looked at them, I was crazy about them. Once I held them, I was hooked. I'm addicted to my children, sir. I love them with all my heart. And the idea of someone telling me I can't be with them, I can't see them every day, it's like someone saying I can't have air. I can't live without air, and I can't live without them. Listen, I would do anything. I just want to be with them. You know, I need that, sir. We have a history. And they mean everything to me, and they need me as much as I need them. So please, don't take my kids away from me. Thank you.
So the judge comes back and says, you've been able to fool a lot of people, Mr. Hillard, but I believe it's a terrific performance by a gifted actor. Daniel's like, no, it's not the case. He keeps going on. He's like, I grant full custody to Miranda Hillard, and you are only going to get supervised visits every Saturday. JD, what do you think about the judge's ruling?
And the crowd goes wild. He's a sociopath. Do not leave children in his custody. If anything that we learned from this movie is avoid him being alone with children. He might as well be Michael Jackson here.
Ooh.
He's got to go to rehab.
You know I did them little kids in the booty. Oh, sorry.
Blanket.
So Miranda is conducting interviews for the housekeeping position next. The first lady just keeps saying, I don't do this, I don't do that. She just goes on, and then Miranda escorts her out the door. And the kids all say they miss Mrs. Doubtfire. And Miranda says, we have to stop referring to her as if she's real. And then on the TV, we hear Mrs. Doubtfire. Oh, hello! And they rush into the room to watch the TV. I'm terrible at that impression.
I loved it.
And then Mrs. Doubtfire, they all just look as they're watching Daniel perform on TV, and Miranda's laughing out loud. She thinks it's hilarious. And we cut to the studio, and Miranda has arrived to talk with Daniel. As they cut the scene, Lundy comes over to talk with Daniel and congratulate him on the show being #1. And the ratings are going up, and he's getting phone calls about syndication. And then Miranda interrupts and asks to talk with Daniel, and he tells her to wait here and goes to change. And he comes out, and she congratulates him on the show and says they've been watching every day. And he's like, oh, it's nice to know they can see me every day. And she says, it's going to be hard to get over all the fights and the arguments, but I know we'll be okay. I just don't want to hurt the kids. He says, well, what do you want me to do? Pretend like everything's okay? And they start to argue again, but Miranda says she doesn't want to do this anymore, and she knows that when Mrs. Doubtfire was around, the kids were happy, and so was I. And she says they missed their dad terribly. They need you. I need you. And Daniel says he needs them. We cut to the house where they're watching Mrs. Doubtfire on TV. Mr. Sprinkles comes in. He's now the mailman. And the doorbell rings, and it's the new babysitter. And Miranda comes out, and she's like, come on, guys, it's going to be all right. She opens up the door, and Daniel's standing there. And the kids are all super happy. Daniel and Miranda tell the kids that he's going to pick them up every day for a few hours. And Miranda says no more court visits, no more liaison, just us. Natalie runs over, gives her dad a big hug, and they run upstairs to get their stuff. And he thanks Miranda for doing that, but he's going to wait outside for the kids. And she just shuts the door. And then we hear Mrs. Doubtfire on the TV reading a note from a watcher who's asking for Mrs. Doubtfire's opinion on his parents are getting divorced and he wants to get them back together. And Mrs. Doubtfire says, some parents, when they're angry, they get along much better when they're just not together all the time. Sometimes they get back together and sometimes they don't. Just because they don't love each other anymore doesn't mean they don't love you. And we see the kids go outside and get in Daniel's car. And they drive away as Miranda's watching the end of the TV show as the credits roll. JD, what'd you think about the ending of the movie here?
What don't I think? I'm going to put it like this. Miranda's a bitch. Daniel's a drunk. Thank you.
Yep.
All props to that. Just tying everything together in this film.
Yeah.
And the kids suck. Like, the kids played no role in this at all, other than just sort of like chiming in randomly.
They were extras.
They were extras. Yes, they were.
Still getting them royalty checks, though.
Well,
let's
the
talk
Lawrence
about
brothers.
Yeah. Now let's talk about needs in that one scene. Like, what you need is rehab, Daniel. And at no point in the film does that even come up. Like, you would think the judge of all people would bring that up. Like, go to rehab and you can see your kids. But no, they're just going to brush it under the rug and pretend there's no problem.
Oh, no big deal. I can dress as a tall, stout woman to see my kids. I won't be a good father and hold a job and clean my apartment. I'd rather cross-dress.
I was also waiting when Mrs. Doubtfire was talking on this scene on the TV about how certain children have different families. Some children have one mother. Some children have a mother and a father. I was waiting for him to say some children have two mothers. But then I remembered, no, this is the 90s. Bill Clinton just signed the Defense of Marriage Act. We're not cool with gay couples yet.
Can't do it.
But his brother Frank was like, God damn it.
Yeah.
Don't forget about Aunt Jack.
Or Aunt Jack was the most upset. He was the most hurt by that.
So the movie's 26 years old. Tommy, how do you think the movie has aged over the years? Obviously, your opinion of it has changed because you see it in a different light now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Robin Williams' performance holds up. If it wasn't for him, if it was like literally anybody else, I think we would not be talking about it, right?
Yeah, I don't
don't
think we
it would. I don't think it would have held up at all. It would be like Hercules in New York, except not even.
But that's a really great segue into what we touched on at the beginning of the episode is who would play Mrs. Doubtfire in a modern remake?
Oof.
You can do a silly, you can do a serious, and in the middle.
Yeah, I went Will Arnett and Steve Carell.
Steve Carell, yeah.
I did The Rock as my silly, James Spader as my in the middle, and Steve Martin as my serious.
Okay. I would need some time for this. I mean, Tyler Perry comes to mind. We've seen Medea, right?
Yeah.
Ooh, well played.
Well done.
It could just be another Medea movie.
Yeah,
really.
it is exactly what it would be. It would just be Medea goes Doubtfire. Like, oh sure.
Yeah.
No, I think this was a fun movie to do. I love you. You totally turned me. Like I went into this movie thinking Mrs. Doubtfire is amazing, and now I think Mrs. Doubtfire is a weird drunk white guy that just can't get work and keep down a job.
I feel bad.
Michael Jackson.
I feel bad because I do really love this movie. And I feel like you hate it.
No, I still love the movie. His performance is still awesome. We're going to be back next week with another episode. Next week, we're talking all things 80s with author Chris Clues. We want to thank our guest, Tommy, for coming on. Again, Tommy, plug your social media one more time.
Thank you.
Our audience, get out there and support him.
Yeah, it's I'm at Feline Machine on Twitter. And if you are in or near the Aurora area in Illinois, I'm at the Comedy Shrine every Monday.
There you go. Get out there, check them out. Get to an open mic. You guys can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, CastBox. We're on YouTube as well. Everything's free. Just make sure you hit that subscribe button. You can email us at backintimepodcast@gmail.com. I'm at kautry29. JD's at unjustjustin. And we're out of time. Time to get back into the DeLorean, punch in today's date, and return back to present day. Thanks for listening. See you next week.